Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that is right, my friends. You have tuned in to America's home for conservative, not bitter talk. I am your host, the one and only Todd Huff, working with Oz here behind the scenes to get something. Oz was supposed to get me. I tell you what, you guys act like Oz is the hero behind the scenes. Oz sometimes needs some direction here in the studio. I'm kidding. She gives out the directions here. Pleasure to be here today, my friends. If you want to be part of this discussion, I welcome you to join us. Todd at ToddHuffShow.com is where you can send your thoughts and questions and feedback. Wouldn't hurt your cause at all if you included a little bit of adoration and praise with those messages. I'm kidding, but not really. Todd at ToddHuffShow.com. That's the email. Or you can text 317-210-2830. My friends. So I actually want to start today. I don't know if you saw Stephen Miller talking with the media recently about illegal immigration, specifically about deportations, specifically about these questions concerning how, well, the process and what a deportation ruling is, a withholding ruling, trying to explain to the media, who admitted basically they don't research any of this. That's basically what they told. They did. I mean, I'm just telling you the truth. He asked them, he said, look, has anyone here over the past 72 hours, over the weekend, have you gone through the process of, here of actually doing your research? And they said, no, as a matter of fact, we haven't. We haven't done that. So anyway, he's talking to them. He's explaining to them the differences here. And I want to go into this because I think a lot of America doesn't understand this. And these things are critically important. You know, one of the things we try to do here on this program is put the cookies, as my good friend J-Dot would tell me, put the cookies on the bottom shelf. And we try to do that here. We try to do that. We want to make the complexities of things more understandable. We want to make them something that all people can figure out. And I know you know how to understand these things. This is really for someone who might be new, maybe to the program, someone who's been indoctrinated by the radical left, that sort of thing. I'm here to help, my friends. I'm here to help give you some additional information coming from Stephen Miller, some of my thoughts as well, if and when you encounter someone who is out there intentionally or maybe unintentionally not figuring out, not understanding something. In fact, it reminds me of today's Todd Talk. You know, a lot of what Trump does, and I covered this in the Todd Talk, I was speaking specifically about the tariffs, but a lot of what Trump does is understandable for those who simply take the time and put in the effort to understand. And you may disagree, and that's fine. I don't even mind that. My problem lies with those who want to deceive and malign about what the intentions or even what the process itself looks like. And illegal immigration is another one of those processes that the administration is trying to enforce the law. This law has been completely ignored in this country. Not completely, that's hyperbole, but you get the idea. It was ignored so much that we had massive amounts of people coming across this border, millions and millions of people coming across the border and playing a game with us along our southern border. The Biden administration was all too content to play that game with them releasing people that were detained at the border, giving them a court date, some far distant date into the future, and then basically not doing anything about it. It's remarkable that nothing Nothing was said, at least in some circles. Of course, in conservative talk radio, in the blogosphere, conservative media, this was talked about a lot. And people are figuring it out. People have seen on social media. They're aware. They're aware of what's really going on, what had been going on along the southern border. I think they're becoming more aware. Some folks just are trusting Trump more, but they're also becoming more aware of some of the fundamental problems that we face in this country, which include imbalanced trade deals, which is why I was talking about tariffs in today's Todd Talk. But you can understand, it's right there for anybody who wants to understand why Trump does the things that he does. You don't have to agree, but it's not overly complicated. Trump's trying to use, in the case of tariffs to leverage a better, more fair outcome or trading relationship with our trading partners around the world. And oh, by the way, at least 75 and maybe well over 100. I've seen 130 nations reported in some places that have said, hey, we want to at least talk to the United States about, de-escalation with tariffs and so forth. Let's renegotiate that sort of thing. It's remarkable. Even if it's 75, 130, whatever the number, it's remarkable that we've gotten to this point. It goes to show how mismanaged things have been for a long time. Now, all that being said, my friends, specifically here with immigration, that's another issue that is misunderstood and misrepresented. It's misunderstood by people who simply don't know better out in the general public. And listen, if you're one of those folks tuning into this program today, that's okay. You are taking the first necessary step here to get understanding. And Stephen Miller is going to explain this, I think, pretty well. He lectures the media a little bit here. Now, we'll talk about it as well. But I want you to know truth. That's the mission of this program, my friends, is to help people hear and receive truth. That's why there's no condescension. I mockingly or jokingly, I should say, at the beginning of the program, say, write me with your thoughts and questions and feedback and include that adoration and praise. Listen, I'm mocking the extreme arrogance of people on the left, of people in the establishment media. They humble brag. They want you to think, I'm just out here doing my job. But in reality, they really want that. I don't want that. I mean, it's fun for me to say, have a little bit of fun with. And it's fun to see what some of you write me in return. I get a little bit of a kick out of it. But the bottom line is I'm not serious. I'm really exposing the thinking and the behavior of the people who have gotten us into this mess, whether they're in the government, whether they're in the media, whether they're in academia, whoever they might be. Those are the people who have gotten us here. And they've gotten us here for a lot of reasons. One of those reasons is absolute arrogance and condescension. There's no doubt that is a necessary prerequisite to embrace the ideology, the godless worldview, morally bankrupt, radical leftist ideology and worldview. So that's what we're combating here on this program, my friends, and it's good to have you here. Before I get too much further into it, I'm going to get into this soundbite from Stephen Miller lecturing the media. Let me remind you that we have launched Freedom Marketplace. FreedomMarketplace.net is a website that we've launched. It has advertisers of this program. It has other folks who have purchased a listing on the directory, and these are folks who have pledged to support, to push in the same direction that you're pushing. It can be demoralizing to fight tooth and nail against leftist ideologies and viewpoints and politics, to fight against transgender policies and DEI and what's happening at your local school, and this idea that government should be a big bloated behemoth and that sort of stuff. And then in a simple transaction, whatever it might be, a grocery store, you're buying some tennis shoes, whatever. You're buying, you're going out to dinner, you're buying any number of products. You go out and you find that the places that you're spending your money are oftentimes taking those profits and supporting leftist causes. That's why we founded and started Freedom Marketplace, because it gives you the opportunity to find businesses that are pushing in the same direction. These are businesses that have made a pledge to me, to yours truly, because we own and operate this. They said that they are not going to promote leftist ideas or leftist candidates. So check it out, freedommarketplace.net. It is free for you to use. and it is a growing marketplace, and I hope you support the businesses there. freedommarketplace.net, my friends, liberty and business for all. So that being said, let's get to this soundbite. Let's get to this clip of Stephen Miller. He's being asked specifically about illegal immigration, about deportation. This is the clip here is on a Rumble. It's something that's posted on a Rumble channel. This article that I'm looking at is at thedailyfetch.com. It's on our Stack of Stuff page. Headline here: Stephen Miller schools media on basic immigration law. You don't know the difference. Jason Walsh wrote this on tax day. I'm going to read a little bit of this to kind of frame it, and then you're going to get to listen to the soundbite. We'll stop it at points, but I want to talk about this for a bit because it is I think a teachable moment for those who, again, they think they know everything. The people on the left, now people of both sides can sometimes think they've got it all figured out, but in reality, it's one of the reasons why we take time. I don't want to be the first to. I'm not a reporter. I don't break news. I would rather help talk through and think through these issues with you in the time required to do it responsibly than just to say, oh, I've got the first right opinion about this issue. That doesn't do it for me. That's really not what people who are seeking truth are after. But some of the folks out there love to be the first, but let them. That's fine. So, article here, which is on the Stack of Stuff at dailyfetch.com. It says this: Stephen Miller gave a group of White House reporters a crash course in the ins and outs of illegal immigration this week in response to accusations that the administration was flouting a United States Supreme Court decision ordering it to facilitate, that's the key word there, the return of an illegal immigrant apprehended in Maryland and deported to his home country of El Salvador. We've talked a little bit about this. This follows the president of El Salvador coming here to the United States and saying that he does not plan to release the alleged MS-13 gang member from his mega prison. So, there's dispute about this, right? The media, I talked a lot about this. I played sound bites from this Media Research Center's study that found that the vast majority of references to this individual who was deported refer to this guy as a Maryland man, as by the way, his name is Kilmar Abrego Garcia, was referred to many times in media reports as a Maryland man, a Maryland father. It was portrayed initially as though this guy was just caught up. They wanted you to think that it was a regular American citizen who got deported by accident. Now, there is some context here. And the context is, I went through this a couple of, probably was last week or possibly the week before. The context here is that this guy was determined to be a member of a gang. This dates back several years. I want to say it was like 2019. It's several years ago. He's an illegal alien. No one disputes that. He's a member of a gang. No one disputes that. MS-13. And he, when he was scheduled to be deported, he basically said, look, I can't be deported to El Salvador because I'll basically be killed. So this is when the judge made an order that said he can't be deported to El Salvador. Now, that's where this kind of explanation, this back and forth between Stephen Miller and the media begins. So there's a deportation order that he is asking the media about. Do you even know what this is? Do you know the differences between these terms? Why haven't you researched this? And he takes the time to, candidly, to explain this. So, that being said, that's the background here. Stephen Miller is standing at the microphone, and you'll hear a question here from a journalist, and then you're going to hear Stephen Miller. We're going to probably stop and start this a couple of times because there's several points that I want to hit along the way. But here he is explaining, quote unquote, this, or I guess responding to allegations that this individual was not given due process and that sort of thing. I just want you to hear this. And again, it's important to understand in relation to enforcement of the law, of constitutional rights, of this fight of actually trying to do what previous administrations have completely ignored, including perhaps the worst offender, the previous administration, President Joe Bribery. Those games are over. Those games are over, as we all well know by now. So Stephen Miller takes some time to answer some questions and explain this and to put this into terms that I think the average American needs to hear. Here it is.
Stephen, also of the 10 alleged gang members that Secretary Rubio said were sent to El Salvador over the weekend, what sort of due process did they get as mandated by the Supreme Court?
Well, you're talking about the alien enemies?
Yes, the alien.
So first of all, a number of those are MS-13. So again, those are just standard removals of El Salvadorians to El Salvador. And
what evidence did you provide that they were MS-13?
Okay, so we seem to be confused about this. Illegal aliens from El Salvador, again, get deported to El Salvador. Do you all appreciate that like tens of thousands of El Salvadorians have been deported to El Salvador? You seem to be under the impression that El Salvadorians living in our country illegally just get to stay here. They don't. They get arrested and deported.
Let me pause there. She asked the question, what evidence did you guys provide? What due process did you give someone to show that they were part of a criminal gang, MS-13, Tren de Aragua, whatever? What did you do? What due process did you do to show that someone was connected? And Stephen Miller kind of chuckled because he's confounded. He's perplexed here because his point is, look, if you are an illegal alien from El Salvador, that is where you should be. That is your country. You are to be deported to that country. That is the law of the land. We're only going to, we reference the people who are the most dangerous first, people that we believe are gang members. There's evidence of it. But here's the thing, even if they're not U.S. citizens, they need to be, if they're here illegally, they need to be deported. So his point here is they keep paying this attention to whether or not someone's a member of a gang or not. Stephen Miller's point, disagree or not, but he's right legally. If you're here illegally, you can be deported, whether you're a gang member or you're not a gang member. Why are you focusing so much on asking us if we've proved that they're a gang member? Because they are not a citizen. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this. Now, this is not, this is just from a common sense perspective, okay? We've talked about due process. Due process is when you are accused of a crime in this country. There are certain processes in place, and the founders put this into existence here. I mean, they saw what happened. They understood history, and they saw in many cases firsthand what happened when a government wanted to target an individual or a group. When they wanted to do that, they would make things incredibly complicated and difficult on the individual that was in the political opposition. So this is why, for example, they put certain safeguards in the Constitution. This is why, for example, you have the right to legal representation, someone who can defend you. This is why you have the right to see the charges that are made against you, the case that the government has. The government, look, the individual accused has the presumption of innocence, so to speak. You're guilty. You're not guilty, I should say, until proven guilty. I've shared this. I was on a jury. I've gone through this. This was actually around this time of year. It was, I think we were in court it was a week and a half, I think. It was right around Memorial Day, so the end of May, and this would have been probably, I'm going to say 2018. So this has been maybe 7 years ago now. And it was intense. I remember I had this program because I would talk about this. And I remember as a juror sitting in that room, going through the case, talking about the evidence. I was, believe it or not, some of you may already know this. Some of you may not know this, not believe this. I don't know. I was the last holdout. I was the last person, and I was the vocal opposition to those who came in and immediately said that the defendant was guilty. Now, it wasn't ever because I truly didn't think he was guilty. I just wanted to go through the process. And it was an eye-opening thing for me to listen to people. In fact, one of the individuals asked me to make the case for his innocence. And I said, that's not the way that this works. The state, the government has the obligation to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person that they have charged with this crime has committed the crime, and that there's no other reasonable explanation for what happened other than the charges that they filed against him are what the defendant did. The defendant was found to be guilty of those charges. So they have to build this brick by brick. Now, there can be evidence that makes you think that the person is guilty, but if the person is, if the evidence doesn't reach the level of beyond a reasonable doubt, then you're supposed to vote not guilty. That's the way that this works. And there's reasons the founders did this. There's a reason that the jurors, I know a lot of people today, I've seen videos, and they're comical. I saw a young guy say, "What? I got called the jury, dude. You want me to sit on the jury with some, local president of a Rotary Club or some teller of a local bank and determine if some guy in my neighborhood that I've never met is guilty of some crime? What?" In fact, he's arguing in the video. Some of these younger folks think there should be professional jurors. Anything but. It absolutely should not be that way. There's a reason that the founders set these things up. It was to protect people from being targeted by a well-oiled machine of manipulation and dirty tricks inside the government. And so you have these checks, you have these balances, you've got a defense attorney, you've got the right to remain silent. You don't have to testify against yourself. You are presumed to be innocent. There's a whole bunch of things in this process of facing criminal charges called due process. And that's what he's being asked about here. But it's different here. I know some people, they'll say everybody gets due process. Well, that's correct when charged with the crime and being faced with whether or not they're going to have their freedoms taken away. But that's not exactly the same thing here as not being even here to begin with, having the right to be here to begin with. You're just to be deported. Doesn't mean there's still no due process. It's just not the same thing that I'm talking about here with all these other procedures and appeals and all of that. So I've got to take a break a little bit long in this segment, my friends. Sit tight. We'll pick this conversation up on the other side of the break. You're listening to Conservative Not Bitter Talk. I'm your host, Todd Huff, back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Playing this soundbite from Stephen Miller where he's trying to explain to a potentially helpless group of people here in the media who either don't understand or don't want to understand the difference, this concept of due process, how it works, and that sort of thing. So I laid out a little bit about how it works in the criminal justice system. And these precautions were taken by our founders for good reason, right? I mean, they understood history, they understood the nature, human nature, the nature of government. They watched what happened when governments were unchecked, and they would target people. That's why they said there cannot be cruel and unusual punishments. These things were used to try to conform people to agree with the group in political authority, the group who had the political power. This was unacceptable for a free society, for a group of people who got their sovereignty from Almighty God, individuals with the right to live their lives as they choose, certainly under the rule of law, but not having the law be used as a blunt force instrument to get from the individuals a behavior that the state desired, taking away true choice and freedom and liberty from the individual. And so when your liberty is at stake, you have processes, you have safeguards built into the system so that you can mount a defense. The government has to take specific steps. There's all sorts of things that fall from this general term due process. Like, for example, if evidence is found that could incriminate you, but that evidence was obtained illegally, there's a question as to whether or not it can be admissible. So if the evidence, again, I'm not an attorney. I don't want to, I don't know the specific line everywhere, and it's argued legally all the time. This should be inadmissible. This should not be. In fact, when I was the juror, I remember we were listening to the police interview, the interview with the suspect, and the prosecution was tasked. They were told by the court that they had to take any reference of the accused, of the defendant's drug use, out of the interview. And they missed one of those particular references. And so immediately when that happened, the defense attorney objected. We were dismissed for lunch, and they were debating, they were arguing with the judge, trying to get basically a mistrial because the jury could have been influenced by the defendant's drug use, which was not directly tied to whether or not he committed the crime. And so the judge decided it would still be admissible. We weren't going to have a mistrial, but that we were to disregard that. That was not supposed to be part of our decision-making process. And the point is that's why there's all this technicality, all these technicalities that try to prevent the government from just doing whatever it wants to get rid of the people, throw them behind bars, whatever, that they find to be a nuisance to their political perspective or what they're trying to accomplish, or just because they hate them because they're on the other side. Now, here's the thing with illegal immigration. See, you're not going to be charged with a crime unless you're a repeat offender, and you can be charged. You can be charged with a crime, and you can go to jail. But that's not typically what happens. Now, if it's repeat offenders, or if they committed a crime while they're here and we decide to prosecute them for that crime, for murder. I mean, we've seen this happen, by the way. If that's the case, there's due process. The process I just laid out, and there's a lot more to it, but all of that process for someone who is an illegal alien, they get all of that due process. What's different here about immigration is that when you're arrested, say, and we say, okay, are you a citizen? And they're not. I mean, this is something that is easy to prove. We don't need to have, you're not mounting a defense as to whether or not, you committed a crime. You're basically a citizen or you're not. You have permission to be here in this country or you don't. And if you don't, and listen, it's not just like you got 5 seconds to prove your citizenship and you're put on the airplane. There are processes in place. But some of these other things that typically fall under the term due process in general, don't apply here. And that's what Stephen Miller's trying to say. He's saying, look, you are conflating and confusing a lot of things here. This person is not a legal citizen. They are illegally in this country. They are illegal aliens. They don't have a right to be here, whether they are members of a gang or not. The only reason we've mentioned the gangs is because those are the people that we're targeting first. If we find people along the way who are not members of the gang in our pursuit of people who are in the gang and they're not here legally, they can still be deported. And that's something that's lost. And it doesn't need to be this multi-year, he'll get to this multi-year appeals process. These are simple facts to be able to demonstrate. This isn't an argument. This isn't mounting a defense. This is, are you a legal resident or legal guest of this country or not? You've got a little bit of time to prove it. There's a process. And if you're not, you can be deported. I don't know what's so hard to Again, I understand people have been misled and deceived about this. I understand that there are gaslighters. I understand that there are professional deceivers in the media. But this is not a complicated concept to understand. Stephen Miller continues here.
And the fact that they're MS-13 just puts an extra priority on our deporting them.
That's right.
We would deport someone to El Salvador regardless of whether or not they were MS-13 if they were here illegally. That's just an extra, because of the priority on public safety threats, we're emphasizing the removals of gang members, in this case, foreign terrorist organization gang members. But as to your other question, they went through all of the due process, as you would call it, that is required by law. So, but I just want to, what I find so mystifying is that I've been talking to you all for a very long time. I legitimately, in my entire, going back years actually, in my entire professional life, I've never received this many questions from the media about an American who was raped or murdered by an illegal alien. Like, legitimately never. And all of you who are enjoying your lives and doing quite well, if you had children and you were living near any of these people, you would move away immediately. You would call the police immediately. You would call us and ask us to make you and your family safer immediately. And you thank your lucky stars every night that you have enough means and enough money not to live in communities where, say, illegal alien pedophiles offend and reoffend and keep reoffending and keep reoffending. The expression there, but for the grace of God, go I. The Biden administration apprehended 2 illegal aliens from Venezuela. They were trained air a lot more than 2, so I'm telling you 2. And they decided they were entitled to an enormous amount of due process. And they didn't feel they had enough evidence to just deport them right away. So they put them on a monitoring system known as supervised release. You're familiar with this case. But a few weeks later, they kidnapped a young girl named Jocelyn Nungary, who was 12 years old at the time. I'm sure you've seen pictures of her. Just the most perfect girl you could possibly imagine. And her mother loved her very much. She was tied up, savagely beaten, stripped naked, tortured to death, murdered. Her body was dumped into the lake. So she didn't get any due process, but I'll tell you who did are the 2 illegal aliens from Venezuela who stole her forever. And
that's right. Now, getting to the end of this segment. Now, you'll also hear there's someone, there's someone across the street or not far away that's speaking on a loudspeaker or a bullhorn or something. That's where you can hear some of that background noise. But Stephen Miller says, listen, what you're saying that these folks are not getting enough due process. That's what you're calling it. You're trying to, again, conflate the two things, the process, the criminal justice due process procedures and all of that, which I talked about, which matter to every person, which matters if you've been arrested for a crime and you're facing, criminal prosecution, you have a right to make sure that to maintain your freedom and liberty, to maintain your innocence and so forth, you have a right to a bunch of things, a right to counsel. I went through this, the right to remain silent. You don't have to face double jeopardy. You can't be tried for the same thing twice. Those sorts of things. And it matters tremendously for our people because it puts a heavy burden on the government. If you're going to take someone's liberty away for saying they committed a crime, we want to be darn certain that they did. You have to be tried in front of a jury of your peers. It's a quick and speedy trial. You can't have any cruel and unusual punishments. There's got to be procedures followed for evidence to be admitted against you and all this sort of stuff. Very, very formal process, right? That's not what we're talking about when we say you're not even supposed to be here to begin with. We're not here to take away your freedom. We're not here to incarcerate you. We're not here to take away any of your rights. We're simply here to say, oh, we've detained you. You're not a legal resident or alien of this country. You have a process. You're due a certain process to be able to prove that maybe you are, and we're just missing something here. But that's not, look, this is not a complicated thing. You provide the paperwork, you provide the documentation, and if you can't, then you're not here legally and you are going to be deported. And the Biden administration ignored this, and they let some dangerous people in. Some of those people killed people, and that's what he's talking about here. But I have to take a break. A little bit long in this segment, my friends. Sit tight. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Third and final segment, talking here about illegal immigrants, those who are being deported, those who are here illegally, and who are part of violent gangs like MS-13 and Trinidad. Stephen Miller is talking about this, saying to the media, you've asked me a lot more about these people, these folks who have done heinous crimes, committed heinous crimes and evil against American citizens. I don't remember getting any amount of questions like this. By the way, this goes on for a long time. I've just picked a snippet, if you will, of this entire dialogue about this. The media is very, very concerned about, and listen, I don't have a problem with the questions, but to his point, why haven't you asked about all the people that have been harmed by these illegal aliens that we're targeting? Why haven't you asked me about those people who were in this country clearly illegally? They were not deported, and they killed innocent American children. What is wrong with you? I'm trying to explain this to you. What you're putting the focus, the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable, as people like to say. Anyway, so that is, we got more about this, more from Stephen Miller in a moment. But friends, let me take a brief little intermission here and tell you that if you are a lover of seafood, I've got just the thing for you. It's called Kenai Fish. They've got wild-caught Alaskan seafood. They've got salmon that's sockeye, coho, and king salmon that comes from the world-famous Kenai and Castleoff rivers in Alaska. They've got halibut that comes from the Gulf of Alaska, again, not to be confused with the Gulf of America, but they've got this seafood. It's delicious, it's fresh, it comes to you quickly in vacuum-sealed packages. It's shipped via next-day air. They've also got shellfish, king crabs, snow crabs, scallops, a whole lot more, sustainably harvested. It's vacuum-sealed for freshness. It's delivered next-day air. Kenai Fish is where you can get this. They care about quality. I know you do too, or you wouldn't be listening to this program. So, if you're listening, my friends, I know you care about quality. If you're a lover of seafood and want quality seafood, Kenai Fish is where you go. KENAIfish.com. Again, Kenai Fish, KENAIfish.com. Promo code Todd will save you 15% off your order. KenaiFish.com, my friends. One taste of this and you will, in fact, be hooked. Let's play a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and play a little bit more of this to get as much of this in. I've just got a few more minutes. The last segment of the hour is the shortest hour, but let's listen to Stephen Miller again, try to frame this properly for the media. Look, he's saying, look, I don't really mind that you have questions about people who are here illegally and making sure that we're following the processes, but where was this? Where are where are these questions when Americans die? Where's the concern when the previous administration let these people into this country, would not deport them, and as a result, people died? I mean, that's the fault of the administration. That's the point Stephen Miller is trying to make here for anyone who will listen. He continues here.
There's stories like that all over the country. We just arrested a pedophile illegal alien who's being shielded by a sanctuary city, who's been charged in 20 sex crimes against children.
It's unbelievable.
None of any of you have had the chance to spend time with victims' families, whose children have been raped, or whose wives have been raped, been murdered. But if that doesn't break your heart, nothing will. And I know that we have
and infuriate you,
like Taylor Lawrence, who fantasize about assassinations and things like that. But in the civilized society, the power of the state is used to keep innocent people alive and to keep innocent women and children from being hurt.
That's right.
This administration is never going to apologize for using the power of the state to keep men, women, and children from being savagely murdered and defeated. If we release known and suspected MS-13 and trained Iragua, and then there's another Jocelyn Nungri, then whose responsibility is that going to be?
Bingo.
You think that we're going to sit around wringing our hands, wondering if, maybe we should, release this person, give them a little bit of extra time, give them a little bit extra chance to plead their case, and then what? They kidnap somebody, they slit their throat, they shoot them in the head, and we say, well, at least the illegal alien got due process. They're here illegally. The only place that they deserve to go is to some country other than our country. And it's not a statistic. These are real lives. These are real families. There's whole neighborhoods in Los Angeles controlled by illegal alien Mexican street gangs. Entire neighborhoods where you have to live in fear because of individuals here illegally engaged in extortion and crime. Not to mention the fentanyl. You have cartels that have functional control over the entire northern territory in Mexico who are pumping fentanyl, lacing our drugs with this chemical. Children are ending up dead. They're going out to a weekend party. They think they're taking something safe, and they get a heart attack and they die by the thousands. So we're not going to apologize for doing something about that. And I just wish we lived in a country where the media gave 1/10 a damn as much about Americans who were murdered and brutalized and savagely killed, beaten to death, as they did about whether illegal aliens that we all agree are illegal aliens
that should
get
be deported.
1 million days in court and 1 million
That's
trials
right.
and 1 million this and 1 million that.
For what?
There's 15 million illegal aliens that violently enter the country. If every one of them got the trial that you're asking for, it would take us centuries to remove them.
Exactly
centuries.
Right.
We've been talking about this in 300-400 years. Their great-great-great-grandchildren would be the ones representing them in court.
He's right.
That's how long it would take. Illegal aliens who come to our country have to be removed, and they have to be removed quickly, and that is an essential component of having something that we like to call a country.
And what's so controversial about that? I didn't think I'd get all that in. Hit the wrong button as I'm starting to wrap up here. But you get the idea. Well said by Stephen. Whatever you think, listen, no one's here saying we should just completely ignore the other process, but he's talking about the other due processes that drag these things out when this is a simple prove you're a citizen or not sort of thing. Folks, I'm out of time here. Got to go. Thanks for listening. SDG.